Hi everyone, this is Saveda from Zephyr Lake Carmelite Mission. Today I'd like to wish everyone a happy feast of Saint Anne and Saint Joachim, the patron saint of grandparents. And also tomorrow we celebrate, I believe, the feast of Saint Titus Brandsma, a special day for all Carmelites around the world. In continuation of my a series on St. John of the Cross's Dark Night. Today, I'd like to share my reflections on Book 2, chapters 15 through 17. And we begin with the explanation of the second stanza of this poem of the soul, the Song of the Soul. In darkness and secure, that's the first line of the second stanza, by the secret ladder disguised are the sheer grace in darkness and concealment, my house being now all still. So this is what we're going to cover in the upcoming few videos. Starting today with the first two lines, we will cover mostly the first, in darkness and secure, and a little bit of the second line of the second stanza. The secret ladder, as I've said sometimes in earlier videos, is our living faith. Our faith in that dark night that we are experiencing, supernatural growth, supernatural communication, but we are living in faith, and that is why it is a concealed, faith that is concealed. That is the secret ladder that takes us towards that union with God. And also, it's an escape because we are escaping from all our imperfections, our weaknesses, our appetites, our affections, our passions. All of these are modified and put to sleep. And so we are secure or free from all these things that try to take us away from God. So the attributes, traits, and properties of this dark night is anguish, is an anguish that we feel, that as if we are losing God, or we have doubts and fears because our senses are subdued, and we are in great affliction or great anguish that we may be far away from God, when indeed we are probably more closer to God than we ever were in the previous stages of our spiritual journey. And in chapter 16, he speaks of the first line in the second stanza, that is, in darkness and secure. That is, the sensory and the spiritual, the interior and the exterior faculties and appetites are subdued, and they are put to sleep. As a result, the soul does not experience the temptations either from itself or from the world or from the devil. So if you take for an example the temptations of seeing, if you're blind, you can't see anything. So anything that would tempt us by sight is no longer effective. So if you apply that same thing to all our sensory and our spiritual appetites, if we no longer have the capacity for those, or we are now in that where it has shut down, it's not functioning, then we have no temptations from either ourselves or from the world or from the devil. Since the natural operations and functions of the sensory, the interior, and the spiritual are darkened and they cease functioning, so the means of the temptations, they cease to become the means of the temptations, and they are subdued, and the soul now walks securely. Okay, for all the ills of the soul comes either from itself, through its own senses, its imagination, or it comes from the world or from the devil, but through its senses, through its imagination, through its faculties. And we do know that all good comes from God. So in the darkness, the soul advances swiftly because there is no barriers now, and its capability to receive God's communication, it becomes very ready. It's readily accepting those communications before it was hindered by itself, its own sensory capabilities. So now it advances in virtue and knowledge and wisdom like it has never done before. The capacity to taste truly sublime, supernatural, divine communication is impossible through natural human faculties, since even the holiest of us, including the saints, is still tainted with some of our own imperfections and weaknesses. And so we are unable to taste this divine communication. However, we can observe its effect. So after it occurs, it produces some results, some changes in us, like the rapid growth in virtues and mystical knowledge of divine truths which were previously not present and were not acquired in a natural way or infused. And here I'd like to deviate a little bit from St. John of the Cross's text into St. Teresa of Avila's analogy of the silkworm in her interior castle, where she describes a soul. She has a vision of the soul that appears like mansions, 7 mansions. And this, she also uses in that book, where she describes that vision of hers, an analogy of the silkworm, that as it enters into meditation, it transforms into a white butterfly, but returns to becoming a caterpillar at a certain phase in its spiritual journey. But then it comes to a certain advanced phase in its spiritual journey when it's able to remain in that union with God in a continuous, ceaseless prayer and meditation. It remains a butterfly. But then when it comes to the very last mansion, the 7th mansion, she describes how this white butterfly now has died because only Christ lives and the butterfly is no more. So this is the 7th mansion of St. Teresa of Avila's interior castle. And this is not brought about by human effort. It is a grace. This is where God leads us by his hand to places that we never even could imagine exist. Like how a blind man is led, we are led in faith to this height of contemplation. There is no natural human way to get there on our own. It is instilled through pure grace. Just like how a traveler needs guidance in an unknown territory, we need God to guide us during these times of darkness, dark contemplation. We need to let go of our familiar ways of prayer and what we know, and we should allow God to lead us in darkness. However, securely, because all these attractions have become dead to us now in this phase. The sufferings endured by the soul, where it fears the separation from God, actually strengthens the soul because it's journeying in faith, and it purifies it, and it also makes it far more virtuous. So the soul walks securely even in this darkness, for it is so near to God as it has never been before. And in this dark night of contemplation, it is freed from all that is not of God. And again here, St. John of the Cross uses the analogy that this dark night effect, quote, this is his own words of translation, this effect resembles a cure of sick people when esteemed by members of their household. They are kept inside so that neither air nor light may harm them. Others try not to disturb them by the noise of their footsteps or even whisperings, and give them a very delicate and limited amount of food, substantial rather than tasty. So this is kind of what the soul is experiencing. God gives it substantial food rather than tasty food. And so it appears like darkness and bitterness, but it is the most sweetest in reality. So the darkness the individual experiences becomes thicker and thicker, like a thick cloud, as the soul comes nearer and nearer and closer to God. The spiritual light of God blinds and darkens the natural senses and the natural appetites. And he quotes several scripture passages, especially from the Psalms. And Psalm 18, he made, God made darkness his covering and his canopy this dark clouds. And also it continues, out of the brightness before him, there broke through this cloud, his cloud. So here we see God, references to God's presence appearing inside the darkness of the clouds. And it's like the darkness, God's presence is as darkness to our natural senses. And we run away from what truly satisfies us. Due to the lack of the sensory spiritual satisfactions, we might be tempted to run away, whereas in fact, we ought to do the exact opposite. Also, there's a natural human tendency to run towards the light of satisfaction. However, that light of satisfaction will not satisfy us, but this dark contemplation, where we journey in faith, will definitely satisfy us, because that's where we are closest to God. So we are called to keep our senses subdued and to tread where God wishes to lead us, not go on the way that we naturally feel inclined to. In this darkness, the soul is hidden from harm and protected from itself, the world, and devil, so it can journey securely. And as David says in the Psalms, this darkness, this dark cloud is God's tabernacle. So we become the tabernacle of God when we experience this darkness, because God dwells in this darkness. He is close to us than ever before. The soul does nothing against God. The soul does not do anything to offend God. The soul is just sensitive and eager to please God. And the soul is often just afflicted with a question as to, or doubts, fear whether it has displeased God, or if it has done something, or if it has failed to do something to please God. And this is a proof of the soul's love for God and its fidelity to God. This is the soul's preoccupation, and not anything else of this created world or these creatures is preoccupying the soul, but rather the concern of possibly having failed God, while the soul has not in fact failed God. It's just experiencing this darkness because the soul is now hidden from these satisfactions, but it is close to God. The soul is also now hidden from all the dangers that it once had faced, and in this sweet darkness, it journeys out of itself and others and all created things to union with God. So in the poem, we see in darkness and secure. And the next line, by the secret ladder disguise. So that's the next line. So in chapter 17, he continues on with that explanation of the second line. In this divine contemplation, of course, is invisible, it is infused, it is secret, and it is dark contemplation. It is not perceived by the faculties, but it's infused into the soul by the Holy Spirit. Since the soul does not know, it is secret even to itself. And since the soul does not understand, it is dark. So that's why we see it's dark and it is secret. And nor does anyone else understand, nor is it understood by anyone else. And even the person who experiences this dark contemplation is unable to find the right words or the proper similes to express or explain what it has experienced. So because of this reason, it remains a secret wisdom. And this, it's loving knowledge, it's simple, it's pure, it is infused wisdom of God's love, and it is very intimate to only the soul that receives it. And the language that God speaks, God's language of love, it speaks directly to the soul alone, and in secret, and it remains a secret. because the Spirit of God speaks directly to our spirit, and no human aspect that is less than the Spirit can perceive or even try to put into words this loving divine language of God. Most people are aware, but they are unable to explain or describe. And most people, St. John of the Cross says, will simply say that they are satisfied, they are content, they are aware of God, and they feel everything is good, all is well. But they are not able to describe and explain this contemplation. And that's why it remains a secret forever. Unlike with the visions and consolations that we can explain, describe what happened and all those things, the dark contemplation is indescribable, and it is ineffable divine love. So it is secret. God allures us out of this world in solitude into the desert, as we read in Prophet Hosea, far away from creatures and created things, to pour his divine love into us in secret, in the darkness of our understanding. And in this experience, we are so transformed and are exalted by God's own wisdom, mystically poured into us. The only perception is a clear knowledge of our unworthiness, our lowliness, our baseness, our inadequacies, and the realization that it is above our natural capacity. Whatever we are going through and experiencing is truly mystical and unexplainable. So with that, I'm going to conclude with John of the Cross's own words. The way of God is as hidden and secret to the senses of the soul as are the footsteps of one walking on water, imperceptible to the senses of the body. So this contemplation is a way to advance to God. It is a guide for the soul that is seeking union with God because it's close to, on the threshold to experiencing that perfect union. With that, I would like to end my video for today. Thank you for watching and have a blessed weekend.